Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Lion, the Way, and the War, where we talk about Jesus, his church, and the spiritual battle that surrounds us all. My name's Brandon Bonner.
I'm Craig Allison, and we'll be
your
your host.
So on today's episode, we're going to be talking about raising kids who can stand on their own. Are we overprotecting them? Are we preparing them? So really the root question of this is, are we protecting our kids, or are we preventing them from becoming who God designed them to be? And so I want to talk a little bit about, Craig, the rise of helicopter parenting. Not something I experienced, thankfully, but, definitely I can see, especially, growing up and seeing the church, how this could be a really easy thing to fall into, right? Every parent wants to protect, but overprotection can create some issues, right? It can create some fragility issues instead of resilience. And so when does protection cross the line into control? Helicoptering, what does that mean? Is it, constantly hovering, it's fixing, shielding, intervening, it's driven by fear, love and desire to prevent pain.
Yeah, I like this episode specifically because it's something that I've seen a lot of. It's part of our family series of podcasts that we've been doing. If you've been listening, this is the third one in the series. If you didn't listen to the first two, I would recommend you go back and listen to the last two episodes. If you're a parent, especially, we're gearing these specific podcasts for parents. I appreciate Brandon's insight, as you've said numerous times you're not a parent. I was going to ask you the last episode, is that, do you have any plans to become a parent anytime soon?
There's a, extended timeline out there.
Yeah. But anyway, this series of episodes is really geared to give some resources to people that are parents or thinking about becoming parents, because it's not too late to start thinking about how you're going to be the best dad, the Christian dad that you can be. So you've set this up. You've talked about what helicopter parenting is. I think everybody's pretty familiar with that term by now. There's a whole nother series of terms now for parents that are based on animals, and it's just, listen, I hate to disparage my own degree, psychological stuff, but some of the things that we're coming up with now are just.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, we'll talk about it another time, but it's just ridiculous. Anyway, there is research on this specific thing because it's been a thing now for a while, and so obviously any type of parenting technique or style gets critiqued and analyzed, and longitudinal studies get done, and so we've got enough data now to show that helicopter parenting is bad. To a point. It's okay to be mindful of your child and that kind of thing. But I think everybody probably understands what I'm talking about with the helicopter parenting. This is the typical, think about the parent at the sports game, their kids playing t-ball, and the parents yelling at the coach because, and just all over and just like constantly waiting to catch their child before they fall and hit the ground, going to school because they've got to fight their kids' fights for them, so that kind of thing. And so research has shown that these kids that had those types of parents, when they get to 13, 14, 15 years old, they begin to show a much larger degree of anxiety. Rates of depression are increased exponentially compared to the kids who did not have a hovering parent. This is an interesting one. Their ability to solve problems are diminished. Well, I mean, that obviously makes sense because mom and dad did all the problem solving. If you're the parent that when your kid came home with this science project or something like that they had to do, and you ended up doing all of the work because you wanted your kid's project to look like it was about to go in front of the TVA board of directors to pitch, the marketing, it's that type of stuff. And it's like so your kid doesn't get any experience doing the stuff that they need to do. So they lack problem solving abilities when they are older. And then obviously right along with that, it reduces their confidence level. It reduces their independence. And so when they get out into the job market, or even earlier than that, when they get into college, assuming they graduated from high school, which they probably did because you did all the work for them. As a helicopter parent, I jest. But yeah, they end up in a space where they just are completely um, lacking they lack any confidence at all in their abilities. So lots of bad stuff. So there's this danger in cushioning every fall. What are we actually teaching when we don't let our kids struggle? And unfortunately, struggle is viewed as the enemy instead of the teacher. And this is a biblical concept that we have. The idea that this world is going to just be at our beck and call, that we're never going to have any issues, that everything's going to be a cakewalk. Parents have taken this and they seem to want to apply that to their children's life. Part of that is on the parents because the parents are having control issues, and there's some psychological stuff that goes along with that. And so understand that if you don't allow your child to have some struggles, they're going to emerge into adulthood thinking that life is a cakewalk. And so the first issues that come along, they're going to crumble, they're going to fall because you did not allow the struggles of life to be their teacher. You viewed the struggle as enemy, and it's not. So Romans chapter 5 verses 3 and 4 talks about suffering building character, talks about it building hope, and God uses difficulty to grow us. So why would we try to eliminate what God uses? And I think a lot of folks have a problem with that. They look at that and go, well, why would God want to create issues for us? Well, it's part of the learning process that we have.
Yep. And I think it doesn't hurt, right? It's actually very helpful. And what we should do is look at what did Jesus do, right? Did Jesus protect his followers from the world, or did he prepare them for it, right? We know Jesus, he didn't remove his disciples from hardship. He trained them to stand in it. John 17:15, my prayer is not that you take them out of the world. Matthew 10:16, I'm sending you out like sheep among wolves. We see this pattern that Jesus knew. He understood. I mean, especially what these disciples and apostles are about to experience. And we're
Right.
talking like some serious persecution to the point of death and running for their lives and completely changing everything. And he didn't pull them out of that.
Right.
He prepared them to face it. And so I think when we think about parenting, biblical parenting, it's not about raising kids who avoid the world, avoid culture issues, avoid the struggles and the hardships and all the above, but it's about raising kids who can navigate it with biblical wisdom and a strong God-centered faith.
Yeah, we're talking about this whole series, basically, we're talking about raising kids who are going to become disciples. And what does Jesus say about becoming his disciple? He says, count the cost. Count the cost. Basically, he's saying, look, if you choose to follow me, you're signing up for a lot of stuff that you're not going to like. It's going to be hard. You're going to get persecuted. The world is going to be against you. And I talked a little bit about that last week during my lesson. It's like, what person in their right mind is going to sign up for that, knowing that? And we look at Jesus and he's like, why would Jesus say that? Well, it's because if you sign up for that, if you sign up to be his disciple, then you also are going to understand the payoff, which is more than we would ever deserve. It's going to be fantastic. So it's not like you're signing up and not getting anything out of the deal. And so, if we're looking at this from that perspective, that we are, as parents, wanting to raise kids who are going to be disciples, and we have prevented them from experiencing any type of struggle or hardship because we catch them, we don't allow them to have any of that. what is that? What is that actually saying about when they're going to step out on their own and become disciples?
Yep.
We've set them up for failure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think there's a balance, right, of protection versus preparation. And so, how do we protect without isolating? And I think the first thing is be logical. This is one that I have seen a lot, and it frustrates me a little bit. I think that some Christians really feel passionate about just completely sheltering their kids from all the bad things and all the struggles. Um, there's a lot we've talked. There's a lot of culture things going on, and culture pulls you different directions, and you're exposed to different things. Maybe at earlier ages than you would like your kids to be exposed to them at. Absolutely. But isolating and sheltering them from that so they're never exposed to it is not setting them up for success, because eventually they are going to be exposed to whatever it is, struggle, things that pull them away from Christ, sin. They're going to be exposed to it. So I think it's important for us to prepare them, not shelter them, but also, use some logic, right? I mean, younger
Yeah.
years, obviously you need to use more protection, and as they get older, they can have some exposure, but be there to guide them and help them navigate through whatever it might be.
Yeah, great. A second way that we can do that is to coach them, don't control. Questions like asking them, what did you learn from this experience, and getting that feedback from them, instead of just automatically trying to fix the outcome. Because if we're not having those conversations with our kids, then they're not going to learn. I'm thinking about the earlier years of my parenting, and everybody can think about, teaching the kid how to ride a bike. You take the training wheels off. Why would a parent want to keep the training wheels on? I mean, can you imagine a 16-year-old riding down the road with training wheels? And that's what you're doing when you're helicopter parenting. You're suppressing your child's ability to grow and to be nurtured and to learn from their mistakes. So, coaching your kid and asking those questions after they fall, processing through that, is a great opportunity there to be teaching resilience and coming from that experience, learning something rather than not learning anything at all.
Yeah, that kind of makes me think coaching. I think of like sports, and what happens in sports most of the time. You experience failure, right? Probably, unless you just happen to be some sort of naturally gifted super athlete and some part of some super team that never loses. Like, you're going to experience failure, and
Right.
and that kind of leads into our next point is, let's say failure happened, right?
Yeah.
I forgot my homework. Well, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, that's on you. That's a choice that you made, and there's consequences. Or, hey, I have this social conflict and I want to do this social outing, but I also have these school responsibilities. Like, those are experiences, and I may choose the wrong one as a child, but those are experiences that it's important for parents to let their kids go through and live and understand the consequences of their poor choices. These are really good training grounds, right? These aren't end of the world scenarios. Like, there's gonna be some consequences. Like, if I don't do my homework or I don't study for my test, 100% there's gonna be some consequences. But at the end of the day, this is not end of the world stuff. I think back, I was in high school. You know the story. I was in high school when there was a test, and
I thought you were going to talk about the speeding ticket.
oh well, that's another good one. Maybe we should talk about. But there's a test, and there was a good buddy of mine that, he was cheating on the test. He was using his phone to cheat, and he got caught. And the rule in it typically is universal. If you get caught cheating, it's a 0. And a 0 on a test, especially when you're getting up there in your higher classes, I mean, that's like pretty significant.
Yeah.
Parent intervened, and they were given a courtesy grade so they didn't fail the test. Or the speeding ticket's another good example. You guys, I think the police officer asked. Long story short, Harrison and I were riding together when Harrison got pulled over on Mount Pisgah Road going way too fast.
Yeah,
um,
way too fast.
with another buddy, Noah, who also goes to Central. So hopefully Noah sees this. But and I think the police officer asked Betsy, because Harrison was smart enough to call Betsy, not Greg. Hey, do you want me to write them a ticket? She said, absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. Give them everything you got. Let me know if I need to come get my car and throw them back in the car, whatever.
Take him to jail.
Take him to jail. So I think those things are good experience. It's good training grounds, because it sets your kid up to understand that there are consequences for the choices that we make. And we know that in adulthood now, that every decision you make, there is a consequence, whether it be good or bad.
And moms and dads have got to be on the same page on this. You can't have one parent that is like, "Oh, I'll be there for you," and the other parent is like, "No, you need to learn. You need to suffer the consequences of that." Betsy and I have always been on the same page there, because we both understand just how important it is to have the consequences of your actions. So we've seen and experienced kids that don't have that, and it is absolutely just horrific. I listen, I feel so strongly about this, Brandon, that I think that it is child abuse for parents to not allow their kids to. I won't say which kid, but one of my children plagiarized a paper, or a paragraph of part of a paper. And so the teacher calls us up and says, "Hey, this has been plagiarized, and so we're going to knock off the score." And it was still a passing grade. It's like a D. And I said, "Wait, what? Are you kidding me? Like, that's cheating. They get a 0 for that." I had to make the teacher give my child a 0, because that's what they earned. That's and so it's that. And Betsy was completely behind it. She was in agreement with that. So parents, you guys need to get on the same page and understand that if you don't let your kids suffer the consequences of their actions, they're going to grow up and be absolutely horrible adults. Like, no one will want to deal with them. Yep. They are not going to be able to keep a job, because they're going to expect everybody to bend over backwards, and they feel like they're going to, should be able to get away with anything that they want to get away with and not have any repercussions on it. Which leads to another suggestion here, another resource is to be present, not overbearing. So let me just recap. Be logical, coach, don't control, let safe failure happen, and be present, not overbearing, which is this idea of staying close enough to guide, but far enough to allow growth. And again, this comes in with age-appropriate stuff that we've talked about. Use common sense on this, moms and dads. Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6, where training implies a process. It's not about just control. And Galatians chapter 6, verse 5, where each person carries their own responsibilities. So these are biblical concepts. This isn't like Craig's opinion on stuff. This is rooted in Scripture. And really, it's the idea of making sure that your children have accountability. That's a bottom line here. We sometimes talk about, in probably context that we shouldn't talk about, sparing the rod, spoiling the child. And I don't know how you feel about spanking, but here again, moms and dads need to be on the same page. The idea behind that, though, is that your kid has to suffer the consequences of their actions. Yep. That's the bottom line here.
Yep. And while we're talking about this, I think, and to your point, to point number 5, what are we really afraid of? Why do parents feel the need to protect their kids, or protect themselves from watching their kids struggle, right? Sometimes parents step in because they don't like seeing them hurt. Sometimes parents might step in because they fear, I think this is a big one, they fear what failure says about them. Yeah. I think a lot of these things, at the root of it is identity. Back to your identity as a parent. Like, where do you find value?
Because your kids are a reflection
Absolutely.
of you. And I have a lot that I could say about that. And I know that, part of my motivation raising kids, these two things came into play. I was like, ugh, that's going to make me and Betsy look really bad. So the natural tendency there is to, step in the gap for them when you don't need to step in the gap for them. And then, yeah, it's true. The other piece of that, you don't want to see your kid hurt.
Right.
it's just like, why should they suffer? And that's a really hard thing. So, I mean, I know a lot of the stuff I've said sounds hardcore. Let me tell you, I struggled with it.
Yep.
Like I did not want to call that teacher and tell them to give him a 0, but I knew that was a good learning opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you have the ability to control the outcome and you can step in and make it easier for your kid or make yourself look better, absolutely. I can see how that would be a big point of struggle. But it's hard, but it's important for us to know that in order for us to grow, I think about back when I was a child and be like, Mom, why didn't you do this or let me do this? Or why did you allow this to happen? And all those moments of discomfort came what? Came growth. Came maturity. And so, growing up, and even especially now, I see that growth and maturity, they require significant challenge.
Yeah.
At 25, 27, 28 years old, if I have a kid that's 25, 27, 28 years old, I would hope that they would not need me to rescue them constantly, right? They're going to be ready to stand and experience whatever they're facing. Because as they've grown up, I've been able to give them the proper resources and tools and training grounds that will prepare them for what they're going to encounter in life. Because reality is, I'm not always going to be there.
We'll close out with this story. I was debating on whether or not I wanted to share it or not. I grew up, for those that don't know, I grew up in West Africa, and this is back in the 70s. And keep in mind here, and I know that my parents still listen to this podcast, and so I'm about to expose something they probably don't want me to expose. So, sorry, I'm going to do it anyway. Their form of discipline and teaching, today may not be as it may be considered child abuse in some ways. But my older brother had found this pack of Camel cigarettes somewhere. Or
I can't believe you're telling this story on there.
Yeah. And so we were smoking the cigarettes, and we were little. We were young kids. Like I was, I don't know, like 6 or something. And so we get caught, and my mom's way, I don't know if my dad had any involvement in this, but my mom's form of discipline was it was basically, you think you're all big and old enough to smoke? Okay, well, we're gonna let you smoke. And I thought that was the greatest thing ever. I was like, yeah, bring it on. And so they got us a pack of cigarettes, and I think my brother, like, he smoked 1 or 2 and then was like, he started feeling, whatever, woozy or whatever. So he quit. He tapped out. Not me. I was committed. I was going to smoke that whole pack. Man, I got so sick, and I was dry heaving. I was like puking up like just yellow stomach bile, I guess. I don't know what it was. I didn't have anything left on my stomach. Well, let me tell you guys something. It worked. I'm a non-smoker. To this day, did not smoke. But my brother, who tapped out, he didn't follow through with the whole smoking routine. I think he has since quit, but he was a smoker. So, it's moral of the story is there needs to be consequences for kids' actions. And so if you're always there to take up the consequences yourself as a parent, you're not doing your kids any favors. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Final thoughts?
Yeah, well, if today's episode challenged you, we encourage you to share it. Let us know. Give us feedback. We're open to topics and ideas. We want this is for all of us, right? To help encourage and help us grow and bring up hard questions and talk about difficult things to talk about. We encourage you to share it. Like us on Facebook and thumbs up on YouTube and whatever else we're on. We're on Apple Podcast and YouTube and Facebook and all the other things. YouTube channel, not station. And also want to plug our sponsors. So, of course, Central Church of Christ, allowing us to have this beautiful studio and being able to record these episodes for you all. Also, Ministry League. If you haven't checked out Ministry League, it's an application on your phone. It's a great organization, a lot of good resources, including our podcast and other forms of media and other podcasts. So I encourage you to check that out. And then finally, want to plug the other podcast that's filmed in this studio, and that is After Sunday, Digging Deeper. So it's a good 10 to 15 minute synopsis of what we talked about on Sunday morning here at Central. So I encourage you to check that out. I I think that's it.
Yeah. Until our next episode of The Lion, the Way, and the War, be kind to one another, love one another, and remember, the creator of the universe loves you so much that he gave up his only son for you. Have a blessed day.